Services Marketing, MKT 625. Lecture number 45.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing MKT 625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to the last final lecture of the course today. What I'm going to talk basically is the wrap-up of the course and then develop certain relationship with the essence of all that we have learned so far with the last small concept, very important to services, and that is the concept of the economic effect of services. The meaning, what is it that lets services get into the zone of profitability? The meaning that we have to draw a relationship between a service and profitability, and we cannot draw that relationship until the time we have a pretty good understanding of all that we have learned so far. Let me tell you that we have learned the whole course spanned over the 44 lectures so far in two major portions. The first portion consisted of all the fundamental concepts of the services marketing. We developed certain building blocks of all those concepts, and once we were done with those, we got on with the next major portion, which was about closing all the four gaps. And you will recall that whatever I have taught you about closing the four different gaps is very strategic in nature. So in other words, we have learned strategies out of an effort to see how to close those four gaps. Back to a recap of all the fundamental concepts that we have learned so far, meaning the first major portion. We learned with the help of all those concepts things like the characteristics of services, classification of the services, variables of the marketing mix, the gap model, and the behavioral models. Two models which I'll be talking about very briefly in the hope that we do have a good understanding of those two models, because they really lay the foundation for all that we have learned thereafter. And then I'm going to touch upon the relationship between quality and satisfaction, which is one of the most important objectives of services marketing. In order to give you a recap of the building blocks, I would like to revisit the graphical presentation which I showed you at the end of our understanding of those fundamental learning blocks. Let's take a look at that with an intention of summarizing the whole thing. As you can see from this slide, we first of all learned that services are different from manufactured goods. There are a lot of similarities when it comes to the marketing management of services, but essentially the services are different from manufactured goods, and therefore the model of marketing management that experts have been using in relation to the variables of marketing mix for manufactured goods cannot be replicated for services. In other words, we have to make certain additions to the variables of marketing mix in order to come at a point where we start managing services effectively. We learned that the services could have inherent the characteristics of intangibility, inseparability, variability, and perishability. And we learned all that with the help of a tangibility spectrum, which you will recall starting from the top with search goods, meaning tangible goods, and going down to the most pure form of services. In the middle of the spectrum, you will recall, we have those services which are hybrid, meaning services that carry with themselves certain tangible goods and therefore are a mixture of services and manufactured or tangible goods. But the fact remains that the services side is so dominant that even industries with the hybrid nature of products they sell, the concept of services marketing are applied, and industries are classified as those falling within the area of the services marketing. You also will recall I having told you in reference to a great marketing expert who says that there is nothing in today's world which does not involve an element of services. As a matter of fact, most of the tangible goods carry the service element, and therefore everything that we deal with within the marketplace is something that draws on the concepts of services. Let me give you one example which probably I talked about earlier as well. One of the largest truck manufacturers in the world looks upon itself not as a manufacturer of just trucks, rather calls itself a company that offers transportation solutions. So this really manifests the importance of services. After we understood all the inherent characteristics of the services and the impact that those have on the different concepts that follow and the strategic formulations that we have in order to deliver services of the quality that we always envisage, we got on with the next learning block or the area of learning, and that is what we call classification of services. We know that this classification consists of the nature of the organization, nature of the service, the need to have customer relationships, and the demand factor, the packages that we offer by lumping different services together, and the delivery method, which is all about the distribution and growth strategies. Just a few words of importance in relation to this concept. We have to fully understand the nature of the organization, because this is something that lets us have a clear idea of the vision of the organization, which is then translated into mission and strategic goals. It is because of an understanding of the organization that we appreciate what are the strengths of the organization and what really are the weaknesses or limitations, and then come up with the kind of services which are a result of the strength of the organization, and try not to introduce those services which may reflect our limitations, because that naturally is not a prudent strategy. The nature of service is all about identifying and then highlighting the features of the service with the points of differentiation which the service carries, because that really gives us a competitive edge. We have to sustain that, and therefore we get into things like not just differentiation but also positioning. In other words, we get into positioning our service very much in line with the strategic objectives, and it is because of the nature of the services or the service that we sell that we get clarity on things like what should be the pricing of this service, how this service should be communicated, and what should be the channels of the distribution, so on and so forth. The next one is the customer relationships, which really emphasizes the need to have relationships with our customers, and that is something which we later learned in detail. As a matter of fact, the two factors that I talked about earlier, we have been talking about these from lecture to lecture at so many different occasions. And likewise, I also talked about the need to have effective relationships with our customers more than one time. And because of the fact that the services could be heterogeneous, and this is what we learned in so many different contexts, and we have to offer services in response to the varying needs of our customers. And we also keep in mind at this juncture the concept of segment of all and the segment of one, and that is something which really makes us appreciate the importance of relationships. And especially when we are in B2B situations, developing relationships with our customers is of paramount importance, because the objective here is to serve them well so that we can retain them and make good profits. And they're not making profits by selling at exorbitant prices. No. What it means is by retaining customers, we can achieve so many different kinds of efficiencies, thereby cutting our costs and ending up with better profitability. The next area of classification of services is the demand factor. This is something which really lets us get into the concept of the differential pricing or yield management, things that we learned later. But the fact is that what should be the price of a service at a particular given point in time, and what should be the price of a service when the demand is low, are the factors that we learned with the help of this demand factor. In other words, it really lets us get into maintaining a balance between supply and demand, and thereby keeping all the efficiencies intact and the profitability in place. We talked and learned quite a bit about this particular factor in relation to communications and pricing and so on and so forth. The next one is the package, and that really is a manifestation of the price bundling and the lumping different service products together and lumping those around the core product. That is the essence of this, because what we do is we lump all those slow-moving service products with the core product, which is a fast-moving product, thereby making the whole package look like an effective set of services, keeping the customer confusion away and charging a price which is better than if that the package was sold as separate services. The next factor is the delivery method, which involves the distribution, and we got into details of distribution as one of the important strategic areas. And you will recall the basic idea is to have an extensive and intensive outreach, just like we like to have for manufactured goods. However, what is important here is the kind of strategies that we should have in place, and I'll be talking about those also in a summarized form a little later. With a proper understanding of the classification of services in the light of the characteristics, we then moved on to developing understanding of the variables of the marketing mix. And it was here where we realized that the traditional model of marketing management of the manufactured goods could not be fully replicated in the area of services, and that again owes to the characteristics of services. We also learned another important concept in relation to the variables of the marketing mix, and that was about the three types of marketing. That is external marketing, interactive marketing, and internal marketing. And this is something that I talked about in so many different contexts, so that we could develop linkages between and among different concepts that we have learned, and also as a strategic measure. You will recall that the external marketing is all about communication that takes place between the company and the external market. It is a part of this marketing that we talk about our promises, and while talking about promises, you will recall I emphasized the need to talk about those promises which we only can keep. We should not be talking about those promises which are to be broken later. And the next area of marketing that I talked about was interactive marketing, an extremely important area, because it is here where the promises are either kept or not kept. It is a reflection of what we have been talking about in relation to our strengths. Whether we have been talking about genuine strengths or just the made-up strengths in order to have an effective communication program is something which is going to be revealed when customers could walk into the service facility and get into interaction with the service providers. And that is the essence of interactive marketing. Interactive marketing, in other words, takes place between the service providers and customers, and everything gets exposed here. And naturally, all good companies work with the objective of delivering service as per the promises the company made. Interactive marketing is not just between the providers and the customers. It also takes into its fold all stakeholders, like suppliers, and all those companies to whom we have outsourced certain parts of our service. And since it is a question of a collective effort on part of everybody to deliver the service, the importance of their involvement as part of interactive marketing can be hardly overemphasized. And then the third type of marketing, which is known as internal marketing, is extremely important. And the memory of internal marketing and the two other types I have just talked about should be quite very fresh in your minds, because I talked about all these in a lot of detail while talking about strategies for communication. Internal marketing basically is development of effective relationships, communication relationships between and among different departments of the company, so that everybody is on the same page about what the company is communicating with the external environment. And this is where we learned later the concepts of the upward communication and horizontal communication and integrated communication with the programs, because these are the ones which lay the foundation for an enabling environment which allows and facilitates people delivering the service to deliver the service as per the promises made. If the environment within the organization does not enable the people working for the organization to deliver the service the way it is promised, then it is going to be a fiasco. And that is not an objective. What really is an enabling environment is something that I have talked in detail at so many different occasions. So suffice it to say, internal marketing, interactive marketing, and external marketing have to work at the same time in such a manner that there are strong relationships between the three, so that the desired objective is achieved. Another important factor of the variables of marketing mix that we learned was about the addition of 3 P's to the traditional mix of variables. In other words, instead of just 4 traditional P's of the price, promotion, place, and product, in whatever order you may like to talk about this, we have 3 additional P's of people, processes, and physical evidence. Without these 3 P's, the variables of marketing mix for services are not complete. And it is the interplay of these particular 3 variables that we base our many strategies on. And therefore, this becomes the basis of our understanding of the strategic areas of services marketing. With the understanding of the concept of the marketing mix, we then got on with another the concept, that is the gap model. And the reason we had to learn the gap model was because services could happen to be very experiential in nature. They're not tangible, and these only could be experienced. We need to look at the customer's perspective. The customer's perspective is that they develop certain expectations of the services they are considering to buy. Because they have not seen the services, they cannot visualize those services, they only can experience those services. And I will rub in again that here we are talking basically in the context of the pure services and the ones which are quite very rich on experience and credence properties. The gap occurs because the customers could have a certain level of expectations, and what is delivered to them is different from what they expected. And what they experience is known as their perceptions. In other words, what I'm saying is there's a gap between their expectations and their perceptions, meaning what they thought they would get and what they really got, and they found a difference between the two, and therefore there was a gap. We learned that there are 4 different kinds of gaps, and in order to make that concept very fresh into your minds, I would like to take you again back to another slide which is about the gap model. As you can see from this slide, the first gap exists between expectations and management perceptions, because what management perceives is different from what customers expect. The second gap is between the management perceptions and specifications and standards. What this implies is that the management is in a position to fully understand expectations of the customers, but it is not in a position to put together the right standards, because there is something wrong with the service design. The third level of gap is between specs, standards, and delivery of the service. What this signifies is the fact that the management is in a position to understand specifications and standards. It has put all those in place, but somehow people working for the organization are not in a position to deliver the service according to those standards. There is something wrong with the people. And then the fourth level of gap that exists between delivery and communication, what this really implies is that everything seems to be in place in terms of the above 3 levels of the gap, and despite those things falling in place, still there's a gap only because company has a tendency, or companies have a tendency to over communicate and to over promise, and therefore there is a gap. Let us go back to the main slide which shows us all the learning blocks of the fundamental concepts, and you will recall that after we understood why those different levels of gaps occur, we understood and learned 2 behavioral models, very important behavioral models from customers' perspective. And the reason we had to understand those 2 models are very important. And those take us back to the tangibility spectrum and also the continuum of evaluation which we understood in order to look into how customers could evaluate a particular service before they have bought it, and while they buy it, and after they have bought it. So in other words, the evaluation the process consists of 3 different phases. The first one being the pre-purchase phase, the second one being the encounters where the actual interactive marketing takes place and the service is delivered, a huge area which I talked about in so many different lectures. And the third phase, which is the post-purchase phase, that defines the future behavior of our customers, an extremely important phase, just like the former 2, because we have to look into our strategic moves in relation to the reactions and the perceptions of our customers. This takes us back to, like I said, the tangibility spectrum and the continuum of evaluation, and I would like to show that slide to you as well very briefly. As you can see from this slide, we have those services which are kind of tangible on the left side of the spectrum, and we have services sitting on the extreme right end which are very pure, like the medical diagnosis, and before that auto repairs. What is important to understand here is that these services which start with things, or the products which start showing themselves from the left-hand side of the spectrum and move along the spectrum rightwards, could be divided into 3 major categories. The one category is on the left-hand side of the spectrum, which is marked by those products and services that are high in search qualities, meaning these are tangible goods or tangible goods that carry with themselves elements of service as well. And don't forget the fact that we show these tangible goods on such spectrums because we have to talk about the service element. The next category of the services is which is in between those high on search and those that are high on credence qualities. Those which are high on credence qualities are the ones at the extreme right of the spectrum, as you can see from this slide. And that brings us back into the middle of the spectrum, showing those services which also happen to be quite high in experience qualities. In other words, services which are high in experience and high in credence qualities are the ones which only can be evaluated after those are bought. Now, if we go back to the main slide which shows us the learning blocks and the linkages between those learning blocks, it is very clear that the model of the evaluation by customers of services as different the categories of services is comprised of the three phases that I talked about in a summarized form just a moment ago. And that is why we've got to fully understand what is the pre-purchase all about, and what are encounters all about, and what is the post the purchase all about. The understanding of the model brought us to learning the next model of consumer behavior, and that is about expectations. Like I said earlier in reference to the gap model, customers do have certain levels of expectations, and we learned that we can divide expectations of our customers into four the different levels, starting with the ideal the level of expectations, and the desirable level of expectations, and the adequate level of expectations. Adequate level being the lowest level, and the desirable level being the level between which and the adequate level we have the tolerance zone. And somewhere on this zone we have to predict the level that our customers expect, and the higher we are on the tolerance zone, the closer we are to the desirable level of expectations. And that should be the objective of any company, to not only be close to the desirable level of expectations, but to try to surpass that as well. And that is something which really brings us to the area of exceeding customers' expectations. The understanding about the expectations is extremely important in conjunction with the other model that I just talked about a little while ago. And this is important because we have to bring about certain modifications in our strategic thinking, the ones that we understand what really are the expectations on part of our customers. Once we have brought about those modifications in relation to the strategies like recovery and all that we all have learned, we then get on to better managing expectations. And in this regard, I would like to revisit the slide which I showed you at that particular moment. If you could take a close look at this one, you will realize that and recall that we have two models sitting side by side each other. And that is the reason that I make them sit side by side, because they have to work in conjunction with each other. We have to have an understanding of the evaluation process, and at the same time how they develop their expectations. They develop their expectations while they go through that evaluation process. Once we have a good understanding and clarity of these two models, we are in good shape and can go ahead with the modifications, the managing expectations, so that we can satisfy our customers and then retain them. We know the importance of the satisfying customers and retaining customers, because that again is something which is one of the very, very significant learning concept and block of the services marketing. With this, I like to go back to the original slide of the learning blocks, and you can see from there that we developed our understanding of all the fundamental concepts which are represented by way of the graphics as part of this slide. And this brought us to the next learning area, which is about the relationship between quality and satisfaction. I would like to talk about this relationship a little later, but let me summarize that our understanding of the learning blocks, or the first major portion of the fundamental concepts, that gets completed here at the end of the slide that I just showed you. And that brought us to the next major, or the second major portion of learning, which was extremely strategic in nature. And you will recall that this portion, which spans over more than 50% of the total lectures, consists of learning how to close the 4 different levels of gaps. So in other words, we have learned to put together different strategies in response to minimizing 4 different gaps. And those strategies are very substantive. And like I said, consisting of more than 50% of the lectures. Let us take a look at the summarized form of all those strategies, because that is going to complete our understanding of the course. And keep in mind, I'm now going to talk about the second portion of learning, which is all about strategies. Strategies, the way we develop them in response to minimizing or closing different gaps. I would like to take you to a slide which shows us in a summarized form the kind of strategies that we have learned. You will recall that the gap 1 has the 4 different strategic areas at our disposal. The marketing research, which we understood and learned in great detail. It has to be a composite program which should go on, and we should be applying the different research methods in order to arrive at the desired assessment of our services. The second area is about the segmentation, which talks about the segment of all and segment of one, and this is where we try to understand strategies as we can put those together in response to the heterogeneous nature of the services. And in that very connection, we also understood what relationship marketing is all about, because this is something which transcends the borders of transactional marketing. It is not just about transaction. It is not the end of something, because once somebody has paid the money, actually the relationship starts afterwards, and therefore it crosses into the area of relationships, meaning the transaction. And then we have recovery strategies in order to bring about the modifications in order to deal with gap number 1. If we have a very clear concept of why this gap exists, we shall immediately recall the importance of all these 4 strategic areas. Gap number 2 has 3 different kinds of strategic areas at our disposal. The first one is the service design. Then we have the area of standards, which should be customer defined, and then we have physical evidence. These 3 areas took quite a few lectures to understand what the whole thing is all about, and you will recall that we got into a complete the business plan kind of a thing, which signifies the different steps involved in the designing a service. And once we have designed the service, we can then establish the right standards from customers' point of view. And then we have the physical evidence strategy. Physical evidence is something very attractive, and we've got to develop this in line with the positioning of the service in a way that the customers get attracted to the facility for a trial of the service. What is important about these areas is the fact that we also looked into the 3 operational positions which we can take, i.e. the position of the cost efficiency, customization, and quality. Another thing which we learned while I was talking about the planning process for coming up with the right design, was the blueprinting, and I think I devoted like a couple of lectures on blueprinting. This is something which really lets us look into all the process flows, the relationships between the different the workers, employees, and the points of interaction, on the basis of which we can further look into so many different strategic areas, and I did talk about all those. Physical evidence is something I would like to draw your attention to the model that I talked about in support of this, because it happens to be an important one. Let's take a very quick look at the slide that is a representation of the stimulus organism response theory and the impact on the behaviors of our customers. At the grand root, you will recall we have the environmental dimensions, and we must create these dimensions in a way that they end up creating some positive cognitive, emotional, and physiological responses. If we are successful in having such responses evoked on part of our customers, we can have our customers behave very positively toward our service, and that is how they follow the approach behavior and not the avoidance behavior. They will go for the avoidance behavior if we are not in a position to come up with the right kind of the physical evidence. Let us go back to the slide of the gap strategies and look at the strategic areas that we have to minimize the gap number 3. I talked about people being a very important, rather the only area that consists of coming up with the right strategies to close this gap. The reason I talked about people because people are everything for our customers. People are the company, people are the brand, people are the service, and therefore they happen to be everything rolled into one. Given that, we have to have the right people, because until the time we have the right people, we cannot have the right HR strategies in place in terms of their implementation. Not only do we have to have right people in place, we also need to support our people with the help of latest technology and process improvements from time to time, so that they can give their best. Again, I talked in detail about this factor. Two more concepts that I talked about during the stream of lectures as independent of gap number 3. They were distribution and the supply and demand factor, meaning the need to maintain a balance between supply and demand. These two areas can also be taken into the context of our understanding to minimize gap number 3, because they do really help us toward minimizing that gap. We need to maintain a balance because of the fact that demand is never consistent, more so in case of services. When we are in peak periods, we have certain strategies. When we are in low periods, we have a different set of strategies. But what is important is that we should try to achieve that balance in a way that we do not end up losing money. Actually, we should end up making more money, more profits. And I would say it again, not because of the fact that we start increasing our the prices. No, it is basically an effort toward seeing the level of demand at one particular point in time and then relating that with the relevant pricing model. And you will recall so many different pricing strategies, of which differential pricing and the yield management pricing model could happen to be very, very prominent. Distribution is all about accessibility, and we also learned distribution in order to understand growth strategies. And you will recall I talked about 3 different basic strategies and then a combination of those, meaning the multi-site strategy, the multi-service strategy, and multi-segment strategies, and then a combination or a crisscross of these different strategies in order to respond to emerging situations from time to time. That brings us to the gap number 4, for which we have a great area, and that area is that of communication. it is very fresh into our minds, and you will recall that it all starts with managing promises, managing expectations, managing our customers by way of educating them. We have to tell our customers the service happens to be complex, and we must demonstrate that we fully understand the service that we have developed in terms of teaching them as to how to use that service because of the factor of the complexity. We also have to show and prove to our customers that we happen to be really good at all the 5 functional dimensions of quality. I will be talking about this particular factor in just a moment. But before that, the last strategic area to take care of gap number 4 is the need to have an integrated marketing communication campaign, which I very recently talked in great details. So this is all about the second portion of the strategies, and the fact is if you put these 2 portions together, the first one, which consisted of the graphical presentation starting with the tangibility spectrum and ending at the bar at the bottom showing the relationship between quality and satisfaction, and the next portion which consists of all the 4 gaps and the strategies that we can have at our disposal to minimize those gaps, we are done with the course of services marketing. And if we can retain these concepts in our minds and not memorize them, I can assure you that we all can be good services marketers. Now, this brings us to the topic of the lecture, which is the essence of all that I have talked about in a summarized form, having implication into the area of profitability. And that is what I meant by the economic effect of services. We have to develop a relationship between a particular service and profitability. We can say in very plain words that any service is up for sale, and if we succeed in selling that service effectively, we can get into the profitability zone. But it is not that easy. The relationship is a little complex to understand, and we must develop that requisite understanding. I would like to again take you back to the concept of the quality and satisfaction, and make it very clear to you all that the satisfaction basically is a measure of quality. If we offer quality, our customers are going to be satisfied, and satisfied customers do have a tendency to stick with the company and to go into the service cycles which are characterized by repeat purchases, meaning those customers go back to the company over and over again and buy the service by spending more and more money, and thereby adding to the profitability of the company in focus. And given this, we have to understand what satisfaction is all about. Well, like I said, it is a measure of quality, and satisfaction therefore has become so important that in many countries, you will recall, it is looked upon as a measure of economic prosperity, along with other quantitative indicators of the pricing, productivity, and output, which are very traditional in economic terms. These countries could also have started looking at the area of satisfaction as a quality measure, because this affects directly the quality of life, and they say it has a direct correlation with stock earnings and value, and it further translates into the area of the profitability if we go down to the level of a firm. And therefore the relationship between quality and satisfaction becomes very evident. Now, the thing is, if we have this relationship, what is profitability all about, and how can we put in place good performance measures in order to see that not only we are making profits, but we are on the right track in terms of our strategies. These strategies which I just summarized as the second major portion of our learning. You also know that the highly satisfied customers they become loyal customers. And this reminds us of the concept of the loyal customers and the apostles who talk about the service so very convincingly, and the concept of the terrorists and those customers who fall within the zone of indifference. And do not forget the objective of making an effort to turn the indifferent customers into those who are satisfied and can become loyal customers, because these customers really mean a lot. The figures that I talked about earlier during my lectures when I was talking about this particular factor are extremely important. If you recall, if we can retain just about 5% the more existing customers, that gets translated into an increase in profitability anywhere from 25% to 85%. So this is the one indication of the importance of this particular factor. Now the question is, in the absence of the satisfaction, what is it that happens? In the absence of satisfaction, we cannot have the customers enticed toward the company, and if we do not entice customers to the company, we cannot retain customers. The idea basically is to attract customers and then retain them, and we can retain them only by keeping them satisfied and loyal, and thereby making profits. How do we do that? Actually, what happens is once we have satisfied and loyal customers, it results in four basic areas. The one is the market capture, other one is the market share capture, the third one is the premium pricing, and the fourth one is the profitability. Now let us take a look at all these four areas which result from satisfaction. And satisfaction, like I said, is a function of quality. So while we take a look at these four areas, we have to go to a graphical presentation which makes the concept abundantly clear. As the caption shows us, these are the effects of services, and this is all about attracting the more customers and improving our profitability. Take a look at the left-hand side of the slide, which is about the company. That is the company end, and if we have good quality, which is shown right in the top box, we have good reputation. But once we have good reputation, we can lower costs. How can we lower costs if we have good reputation? Just take a look at the right side, which is the customer end, and you will see the positive word of mouth. Naturally, when you have good reputation, your customers talk about your company in a positive way, and that makes them stick with the company. Not only they stick with the company, they also bring in more customers, and when more customers come to the company, they also become satisfied and loyal customers if you maintain the quality of your service. And at the end of the day, the customers get ready to pay you premium pricing, and the result of all these effects that you see as part of this slide are better profitability, which is self-evident. Now let us take a look at these factors one by one, though briefly for the paucity of time. The reason we can achieve the lower cost because we are in a position to retain our customers. We retain our customers because they are satisfied customers. It is said, and you know very well, that attracting new customers is extremely expensive. You have to go for communication campaigns, advertising, and the personal selling. You have to get into promotional costs by giving discounts because you want to have your competitors' customers switch over to your service, and so on and so forth. Conversely, if you can retain your customers, and if you take a look at the figures which I just mentioned, you know the importance of retaining our customers and why we as sellers are in a position to save costs. And this takes us to the area of the quality as well, because when we are serving our customers again and again and offering quality on a repetitive, iterative basis, we become great experts of delivery. We do not make mistakes, and the rate of errors is on the lower side, thereby reducing the cost of quality. This is how we lower costs. And if you go back to the slide which I just showed you, you will know what I'm talking about. The next area which I need to talk about is the word of mouth, which again I showed you as part of the slide. The people do talk about very positively about the service if they happen to be satisfied and loyal customers. And keep in mind that nothing is better in terms of a communication campaign than a positive word of mouth. This is the most effective strategy and a tool at our disposal, and this is a tool for which we really have to work very hard to create. And what happens is known to you. Satisfied customers, more buying, so on and so forth. And the next area which I have to talk about in relation to this slide is the larger volumes. And this is what I was talking about. All those customers put together have a tendency to spend again and again and more, thereby increasing your volumes. Yet another area is that of loyalty. Not only these customers talk positively in favor of the service with other customers, they also talk in so many behavioral terms of strategic importance that we must not ignore those. What are those? The behavioral intentions. I would like to give you an example from the textbook which talks about the students of a university while they got jobs, talking about their alma mater positively with their employers and other students, and also raising funds for the university they look upon with a sense of pride. So it is not just the word of mouth, it could be so many behavioral intentions of very high strategic importance. So this is something that we need to understand. And if we can achieve all that, we can get into premium pricing. The premium pricing is something that we learned with the help of the demand-based pricing model, which must be very fresh in your minds. You know, if we are in a position to offer the benefits which get translated into value as perceived by customers, we can charge a price which is more than the one which is otherwise charged as the followers of competition or the cost-based method or competition-based method or whatever. We can charge a premium price, thereby adding to our profitability. And with this, I can tell you that the profitability is guaranteed if we can keep our customers satisfied and loyal. But one more factor that we have to learn is rather recall and revisit is the concept of the 5 dimensions of the quality. And here I'm talking about the functional dimensions because those happen to be the key drivers of quality and attracting customers, retaining customers, and profitability. We know that we need to have the different levels and intensities of these dimensions because we need to have different combinations for different kinds of services. We need to have different strategies for different services for different times, and therefore we need to be very sensitive to the kind of combination of all those qualities that we need to put together while we are selling a particular service at a certain price, so that we can keep our customers satisfied and loyal, and could also make the right investments in terms of those qualities. You have to make the people more knowledgeable of the services. You have to make people very assuring. You have to make people very empathetic, and they must talk with a lot of confidence, and you have to have the physical evidence which is supportive of all those dimensions, and therefore we must not lose sight of the key drivers. We have to also understand how to enhance the profitability factor and the effect of the key drivers of the customer retention. Experts say that we not only have to look at the financial side of the services when it comes to profitability, we also need to look at the more perspectives, and those are the customer perspective, the operations perspective, and the learning perspective. So in other words, what experts emphasize is the fact that the financial management or the financial side of services is one great indicator of performance of our services, but that is not just enough. We have to add to that those three perspectives that I talked about, and the customer's perspective can be understood with the help of their perceptions about the service, and for knowing what those perceptions are and how they assess us on the merit of the different dimensions of quality. We have to go back to the marketing research, and in particular the serve call, whereby we can really assess ourselves and thereby make sure that we are on the right track. That is the main objective of understanding the performance measures in relation with profitability. Experts go on to say that in addition to the effects of the service on profitability and the key drivers, we also need to have three more perspectives in place before we really can put together the performance measures. What are these the three perspectives? The one is the customer perspective, the other one is the operations perspective, the third one is the learning perspective. And these perspectives have to be put together in addition to the perspective on financials. The financials are something which we've been having for the last 400 years. The other three perspectives that I just talked about are new ones. We have to fully understand how customers assess us. We have to develop standards in line with that assessment, and for that, like I said earlier, we have to go back to the marketing research and find out where we stand. And at the end, we must not lose sight of the learning perspective, meaning that we should learn some lessons and come up with the services that are up to the mark and meet the expectations of our customers. With this, I conclude this course on services marketing in the hope that it really has added a new dimension to our understanding of services marketing and its management. Thank you very much. Good luck to you. Have a great practical life.